And they have developed an amazing program called Creation Health, and Lionel will probably give you a little of the history of that. But Lionel has been right in this program from the beginning to help to develop a lot of the materials. So it's our privilege to have him here because he has a lot of those inside insights that he'll share with us. And you may be wondering, what are we doing this afternoon at 2:30? Yes, what are we going to be doing this afternoon at 2:30? Well, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Lionel's going to do the presentations this morning. And for those of you who would like to do this in your own churches, then come at 2:30 this afternoon, because we don't really have time to answer all those questions about how we do it in the community, what goes where, and how does this work, what materials have we got. That's what we're going to deal with this afternoon at 2:30. So you're going to see the program, you have a chance to be inspired, to make a decision to improve your life. And if you just do one thing out of each section, that'll be 8 new things in your life this week. That'll be pretty impressive. And so, but we're going to show you this afternoon how to do it in a small group, how to do it for your church, how to do it for Sabbath school, how to do it for prayer meeting, how to do it in your community. That's what we're going to show you. And each afternoon, we're going to do like a little wash-up. So I'm going to show you, we're not going to use the DVD this morning, but we're going to use the PowerPoint presentations this morning. In the afternoon, we're going to do the DVDs, and I'm going to show you just how easy it is to do this program. So if you want to do it with your family or church or work colleagues, I'm going to show you how to do that. So this afternoon is the how-to. This morning, you can sit back and just enjoy feeling better. And hope you've all got one of these sheets. Yeah? I've got all the material on the back table over there. And you can take a look at all the material, the small group material as well. And if you do not have a pen, I have one here. So I'm going to go, while Lionel is just doing an introduction, I'm going to whiz along and give some pens out, because you'll want to write down some of the things that you see this morning. Right, Lionel?
That's right, Chris.
Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate you spending this week with us.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Are you having a good week so far? Good weekend? Is it hotter this year than it usually is at camp meeting? And when I landed last night, it was still like 100 degrees. And I thought, man, this is like Florida, except with the palm trees and the breeze and the ocean. But it's good to be here. And it's a double treat to be here. Last year, I taught Creation Health, introduced it for the first time at Gulf State's camp meeting. And the conference is so pleased with how things are going with Creation Health, they wanted to do it again in camp meeting this year, so others who might not have had a chance to attend last year could do so this year, to kind of send a message that this is working in the conference, and it's here to stay. Not some things come and some things go. Well, this is going to be around for a while. I want to apologize to you. I'm going to move around, so you're going to have a hard time keeping up with me, but good luck. I was thinking, Chris, after you pass out the pens, I've changed my mind on something. These Creation Health pocket guides, maybe we could pass them out early on here in the program, because I think I'm going to reference this later on. So what we have here today, we're passing out a pen. Also, back on the table is a Creation Health self-assessment. If you'd like to see where you are with each of these 8 principles. We have on the back table a Creation Health bookmark. The bookmark summarizes each of the 8 principles. In fact, we gave this bookmark to 21,000 high school public teachers in Orlando. Actually, 21,000 public school teachers in Orlando just 2 years ago. And interestingly enough, they called me up a few months ago, beginning of the year, and they said, we'd like you to come teach Creation Health for our school, for our teachers. And this was the Osceola County public school system. And I said, well, you do know this is a faith-based approach to wellness. They said, yes. And I said, you do know that one of the components is trust in God. They said, yes, we know. And they said 90% of our teachers are Christians and want to know more about that. And they said, what we're going to do in order to make this acceptable, because of the whole separation of church and state is pretty severe, pretty strict when it comes to the school system especially. They said, we're going to make this voluntary, and we are going to invite teachers to come after school. They said, why don't you send us your material and let us take a look, because maybe we'll have to hold it off of our school premises, away from the administrative site. So I sent them the material, and so I was trying to find a space at one of our hospital campuses that their teachers could travel to. Orlando's a big place. We were wanting a central location. They called me back and they said, you know what? We looked at the material. We want to have this right here at our public school administrative offices for our county. So we went in, taught a Creation Health seminar. They had 35 teachers show up after school once a week for 6 or 8 weeks, whatever it was, and they loved Creation Health. Some of the stories coming in, we debriefed every week about what they had learned the week before and how they'd put it into practice, those principles. And there was one teacher who said that she had a sister that she didn't like. They didn't have a relationship at all. But after going through our presentation on interpersonal relationships, which we'll be doing on Thursday, I believe it is, she said, I made it a point to call my sister, and she said, we've scheduled time to get together and try to resume our relationship. There was a teacher who said, you know what, after hearing your presentation on trust in God, she said, I felt the Holy Spirit speaking to me that I had been disconnected from my church. I didn't attend church anymore. I had nothing to do with the religious activities of the heritage I grew up with. She said, after hearing that presentation, she said, I called my church to see what mission trips or what Bible conferences were coming up, and I've registered to attend one of them in just a few weeks. There was another teacher who told me, she said, I'm sick, and I've been chronically ill for a few months now, and she said the physicians cannot find what's happening to me. They don't know. She said, over spring break, I'm going to go in for another battery of tests, see if they can find out what the problem is. And she said, I was very, very afraid before going through Creation Health. But having gone through this, she said, I now have a sense of calm and faith that God is in control and things are going to work out. And I'm not afraid anymore. So it's interesting to see how God is using the Seventh-day Adventist health message to enter territory maybe where it might not have entered previously for whatever reason. And I'm very humbled and very honored that God is calling us to partner with Him from a platform of health to influence people toward wholeness and happiness and actually to establish a relationship with them that we can continue to minister to them. Now, as we go through this week, you're going to hear a lot of information. And I talk rather fast, so you're going to get more information from me than you would a typical person probably presenting this wealth of information. What I really want you to do is not really try to keep up with me. I'm going to go and do my thing when it comes to this, and I'm going to try to be sensitive to your needs and where you are and where the Holy Spirit's leading us as a group in this experience. But I know that in the middle of all of this, there is going to be some area in your life that God is wanting to give you attention to. He's going to want you to focus on that area. There are 8 areas in Creation Health: choice, rest, environment, activity, trust in God, interpersonal relationships, outlook, and nutrition. As Pastor Chris said, if you chose just one thing from each of those 8 areas, that'd be a fantastic week. And usually what we do is we encourage people to choose one thing they can start focusing in on each of those principles. Now, I'm with you for 5 sessions. Starting tomorrow, we're going to do 2 presentations a session, 2 principles a session, which means you're going to get a lot of information. So, do not allow yourself to be overwhelmed. Do not allow yourself to feel frustrated. You just might feel frustrated. It's okay. There is enough information here to work on for months and months and months. You don't have to get it all this week. If all you did was begin focusing on one area of the 8 this week, that's great. That is a perfect starting place. What I'm going to try to remember to do each day is at the end of the presentation, go through this Creation Health Pocket Guide to give you some ideas perhaps where you could start. So we'll make sure everybody gets one of these pocket guides before the morning is over. Maybe you already have it. You have it, I see. The other thing we're going to do is every day you're going to have one of these outlines. And at some point during the presentation, we're going to go through and make sure that you have all of the blanks filled in. When you watch the DVD, it's kind of obvious what the answers are, but when you're watching me and doing the PowerPoint presentation, it might not be so obvious. So I want to make sure you have the answers. I want to make sure you have a summary of what we're teaching. On the back, there's a place to take notes. So if you feel prompted or impressed, take a note. I'm going to promise not to put you on the spot. I am going to ask you a lot of questions. I don't intend for you to answer those questions to me verbally. I want you to think, do some reflection. 2 things to keep in mind as we continue with this morning. One thing is, we'll add a third one. One thing is, when are we supposed to end? Anybody know? 12 o'clock? 12, okay. 12 o'clock. Second thing we need to know is, I'm trying to remember the other two things. One thing is, I don't want this just to be another seminar. This is not a program. We are studying God's original plan for living life to the fullest, right? This is a process. And I think God intends it to be a transformational process. So this experience here this week, let's make it living, dynamic, spiritual, Holy Spirit-led. I think you're here for a reason. I know you're in the right place. God has something He wants to do in your life this week by reintroducing to you His eight original principles for living life to the fullest. So that's what this is. This is a transformational opportunity. So you can make of this what you want to make of it. Come away from it from what you want to come away from it with. The other thing I wanted to say, I just remembered the second thing, and this is very important. We're going to do two things this week in answering this question. One, you're going to see Creation Health as it applies to yourself personally, all right? Focus on that, number one. The second, equally most important thing, though, is that this is an outreach seminar. So you're going through it yourself and experiencing it yourself, but this was intentionally designed, structured by Florida Hospital to be a bridge event seminar for your church to connect with your community, to engage your community, to start relationships with the people in your community. This is, as I say, and I've been on the ground floor when it comes to the church part of it, this is an excuse to go into your community and make friends. So please know when we cover these principles, these are not going to be doctrinal oriented. These are outreach oriented, bridge event oriented, so you can make relationships with people in your community and then have earned the right and their trust to invite them back to something else that your church will do. I say this because I get criticism on one point when it comes to the Creation Health Seminar. I don't get criticism on any of the other points except this one. They say, when you talk about rest, you don't talk about the seventh-day Sabbath as the day of rest. Well, no, I don't. But we do talk about the Sabbath principle because this is a bridge event seminar. Even in a crusade, grew up doing them with my dad and uncle, whole family evangelists, we didn't cover the Sabbath until the 8th night. We knew that when you covered the Sabbath on the 8th night, you're going to lose half your crowd. That was your first drop. We cover rest on the second night of the Creation Health presentation. So do you think we're going to get doctrinal? No. There is a time to become doctrinal on that issue, and that time is when your church has a study on it a few months later after you've made friends with the people in your community. Am I making sense? So you understand the orientation here. There's a particular reason why we're doing it this way. Now, just to let you know how effective it is, he's becoming one of my best friends. He's a senior pastor of the First Baptist Church of Altamont, which is a suburb of Orlando. His name is Pastor Todd Lamphere. He's probably in his, he's about my age, middle 40s, and he's a great guy, a wonderful man. Met him about a year and a half ago because of Creation Health. And I taught Creation Health at his church on Sunday evenings around that time, and he preached a Creation Health series Sunday morning at his church called Revolutionary Living. And he told me just a few weeks ago, we meet, he's a Boston Red Sox fan, I'm a New York Yankees fan, so we like to get together and give each other a hard time. Both our teams aren't doing really well right now. But we get together, and he told me, he confessed, he said a couple of things, Lionel. He said, one, he said, before I got to know you, he said, I thought you Adventists were really out there. So I'm glad to see that there's been progress made there. He actually thinks of us differently now. But what he said was this. He said, until I met you and went through Creation Health and heard the principle of rest, he said, I've been pastoring for 26 years. He said, I never had a Sabbath. And he said, I decided that I was going to have a Sabbath. And he said, I've chosen to make my Sabbath, and he's changed his Sabbath. He said, I've chosen to make my Sabbath Monday. And I'm thinking, I'm really great you're having a Sabbath. In the back of my mind, as an Adventist, knucklehead, I'm thinking, well, you're 5 days late. I mean, 5 days, 2 days late, 5 days too soon. But I got to thinking, you know what? He has a Sabbath now. It's a step. This senior pastor of the Baptist church, he's a very good friend of mine. Now, when we met just a few weeks ago, he said, you know what? He said, I've changed my Sabbath to Friday. So he's 24 hours away from, the biblical Sabbath, and he's talking about having a church service on Saturday night at his church. So it's interesting to see the shift that can take place, and I don't know what's going to happen ultimately, But I know if we cooperate with the Holy Spirit and our lights for Him and for His grace and truth and do it in a way that Jesus did, rubbing shoulders with people as one who had their highest good at heart, God will bless. We want to heal people. We want to minister to them. We want to attract them to the family of God. We don't want to be wedges. We don't want to be stubborn and bullheaded and repel them away. And that happens too much, all too often, especially with regards to health. So this is a different animal that you're going to be experiencing this week. All of that makes sense? You with me? All right. Today we're going to go over the introduction of creation health, and then we're going to cover choice additionally with that. We're going to do something like, I guess, cross-training, you'd call it, with health this week. Tomorrow we're going to do rest and environment, because those two are closely aligned. Wednesday it's going to be activity nutrition, because they're aligned. Thursday is trust in God and interpersonal relationships. These all have relationships, so we're doing two on the same day. And on Friday, we're doing outlook. I only want to focus on outlook on Friday because that is the most important one of these 8 principles. And if you can't come back to another creation health presentation this week, you only can go back to one more, come back on Friday. That is the most important one. And I want you to hear that. So you're going to get the material. We won't go in great depth that you normally would during one of our seminars, but this is going to work just fine. So today we're going to go over the introduction of creation health. Let me ask, just so I know, how many of you were in my class and Pastor Chris's class last year? So not many. Okay. I'm sorry. Some of this will be a repeat. A lot of things happened, though, since last year. So most of you don't know this and you don't know the story of creation health. So I'm going to start with a poll. You guys will know the answers. What is the second leading cause of death among men in Florida in the ages of 25 to 35 or 25 to 34? If you were to guess. Yes, it's suicide. Suicide used to be the second leading cause of death in Florida for men 65 years and older, which was a shocking statistic that just moved the state to put some initiatives into place, because of all the things you can think of that might take a person's life at the age of 65 or older, suicide should not be on the list. So the state got to work, and now that's no longer the case in our state, but unfortunately, it is among this age group, 25 to 34-year-olds. And as you do the research, you find that this is just not a thing happening in Florida. This is actually happening across the country. Suicide is getting more and more prevalent. In fact, there's another statistic on suicide I have here. Suicide is the third leading cause of death among people 14 to 24 years old. Third leading cause of death among people 14 to 24 years old. Now that strikes me because the only way that these people see they can escape their pain, the only way they can end their pain is by taking their life. And that saddens me because we compare that to what Jesus offers. He says, I've come to give you life, that you might have it more abundantly. But you compare that to what they're doing, they're taking their life, they're not even having a chance to experience this, which leads us to know that something is wrong here. There's a war going on. The war is, we don't normally quote the other part of this text. The thief comes to do what? Yes, steal, kill, and destroy. So what you have here is, you have two lifestyles that are in fierce conflict. They are mortal enemies. And as I look at the healthcare situation, the crisis that's taking place in this country, I see that there is a lifestyle of light, life, hope, and grace, the abundant life that Jesus Christ wants to offer based on the 8 original principles God gave us in creation. And I see a lifestyle that's doing all that it can to bring helplessness, hopelessness, meaninglessness, stress, frustration, anger into people's lives, to make their pain so much, to make their sense of isolation and loneliness so profound that they want to escape. And the only way they can think to escape and be done with it permanently is just to turn the switch off on their life. There's never been a better time for the church to be alive with its message of hope, health, and healing than today, because our world today needs it. It's always needed it, but it needs it more today than it ever has needed it before. And God is blessed by opening doors and windows where people are now seeing our church as an authority once again in the area of health and wellness. We kind of lost that for a few decades for a number of different reasons, but that's not the case anymore. People know that the Seventh-day Adventist Church knows what it's talking about when it comes to healthy living and disease prevention. So we have a sacred privilege and opportunity to lead from the platform of health to help people see what it means to be healthy. But I'm telling you what, it's going to be more. It's more than just nutrition and exercise. These are important, but these aren't the end-all, be-all. And this is where we've tended to focus through the last few decades. There's much, much more, and I hope to prove it to you by a slide I'm going to show you in a few minutes. But before we get there, let me ask you, does a typical lifestyle here create disease or health? Yeah, that's a no-brainer. Creates disease. In fact, let's look at what's happened. In fact, I have updated slides since last year. Let's look at the obesity trends the last 26 years. As you go through these maps, I'm going to go through it quickly so you can see what's happening. The lighter the color, the better the statistics with regards to obesity. The darker the color, the worse it's happening in that state. Now, just to make sure we're on the same page, that's Mississippi right there, right? And that's Alabama? Okay, so watch those two states as we go through. 1985, 1986. New colors added. Over here in Mississippi, 15 to 19% of the population in 91 obese. Is it getting better or getting worse? Is it getting a little worse or a lot worse? New color added. What state's that? Yeah, Mississippi, greater than 20% obese in 97. I don't know what happened between 1998 and 1999, but look at that. In 1 year, it looks to me that you almost covered half the United States, or pretty close to it. New color added. What state added the color? Yep, greater than 25% obese in 2001. 2002, Alabama joined. Another big jump. See that? In 1 year. That's 2007. Can't read that. 2008, 2009. 2010, that's the latest statistics we have. Now, I'm not a clinical person. I'm not a scientist, but I would say what we just seen is an epidemic spreading across this country in 26 years. There is a healthcare crisis on many levels in this country. I'm going to share some statistics in a few minutes on that from the Surgeons General that I heard. In 1990, 10 states had obesity rates less than 10%. No state had a rate of 15% or higher. By the year 2000, no state had less than 10%. 23 states had 20 to 24%. No state in 2000 had an obesity rate of 25% or higher. By 2010, no state had a prevalence of obesity less than 20%. 36 states had a prevalence equal to or greater than 25%. Those 12 states are listed, and our states listed on there from this conference. Yes, Alabama and Mississippi. These 12 states, those that are listed there, had a prevalence equal to or greater than 30% of their population being obese. Now, this is a serious thing. I'll read more on Wednesday, but one of these cancer institutes just released research in March. And they said 1/3 of all cancer deaths, 1/3 of all cancers are attributed to obesity, and there are reasons why. So just by simply managing our weight better, hey, I'm on a journey too, I can talk about that more later. Just by trying to make positive change in this area, we're going to be adding to our health. But I think there's a reason why this nonsense is happening, this crisis is happening. And I don't think it's going to be solved by telling people to eat better and exercise more. Because we've been saying that for decades, and I love this church, and I love our health message, because I like the freedom it brings to people and the quality of life it gives to them again. But if you're going to be kind but critical, give a constructive, critical evaluation of our church's work over the last 100 years, it seems specifically the last 30 years, we've not made a dent on that map. We've not reversed that trend. It doesn't seem like we've gotten in the way to try to stop it. I'm not sure we even slowed it down. And we're the experts when it comes to this. So there's something more than telling people to eat right and exercise more. But if you look at the map, here you go. Back in 1986, 2000, 2010. That's a horrible picture, isn't it? If it keeps going that way, what do you think is going to happen to the people in this country? What is the end destination for this trend? Death. In fact, we have kids now, 15, 16, 17, who are type 2 diabetics. If they contract diabetes at the age of 15, 16, they're at high risk for getting kidney disease at the age of 30 and having neurological problems at the age of 30. I mean, we're killing ourselves. It's sad. You've seen this stat. 2/3 of the adults in this country are obese or overweight. Obese, technically, if you're 30 pounds heavier than you should be, you're obese. Technically, if you have a body mass index of 30 or higher, you're obese. If your body mass index is 25 to 29.9, you're overweight. Now let's look at diabetes trends. Same thing, lighter the color, the better, the darker, the worse. Is it getting better or is it getting worse? Is it getting just a little bit worse or a lot worse? A lot worse. Matter of fact, there's a new color added back in 2001. My state can join Alabama and Mississippi with greater than 10% of the population being diabetic. And these are just the people who are diagnosed with diabetes. And that slide is from 10 or 11 years ago. I looked for updated slides and I couldn't find them. So you know, we could make an assumption that it probably has gotten worse in the last 10 years, since it got a lot worse in the 10 or 11 years previously prior to that. Here's the deal. 9 of the 10 leading causes of death are because of lifestyle. Leading killers today are coronary artery disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, high blood pressure. 120 years ago, most likely to kill you are stuff that's coming from the outside in. You know, your plagues, your pneumonias, your those types of diseases. Today, we've pretty much dealt with all of those. What's killing us today is from the inside out. Now, this is a trick question, so say yes. Is it good news that it's from the inside out? Yes, because then what can happen? If it's from the inside out, can we do something about it? We can do something about it. So as depressing as this is very, very encouraging to me, because it means we're in the driver's seat. We can start turning this thing around right now, if we want to. You're in charge. We're dying because of how we live, which means if we start living differently, if we start living better, we will start living longer and have a higher quality of life. Number one cause of preventable death is cigarette smoking, but experts say obesity is a close second, and pretty soon it's going to overtake smoking as a leading cause of preventable death in this country. Obesity. Now, there are a number of reasons why I think, and we could have a discussion that would last an hour and a half on this. I'm just going to give you my opinion. I'm sure you have yours, and you can do with my opinion what you want. I think there are a number of reasons why the obesity thing is out of hand. One, I think that manufacturers are using ingredients that are not as healthy as they used to be. You know, I try to avoid high fructose corn syrup, all that nonsense, MSG, these things. I don't want it in my body. You can do what you want to do with it. I don't want these, you know what I'm saying? And they sell it for like, you know, you can go, it might cost you, Jennifer does the grocery shopping, so I don't know what the prices are, but say, you know, a 5-pound bag of potatoes, what would that cost? I don't know. Depending on what brand you get, what'd you say? $4, you know, you might be able to get a can of macaroni, you know, generic brand for 99 cents. You know, so if you're a person who's pressed for time and you don't have money, are you going to go for the $4 5-pound bag of potatoes that you have to peel and all that other stuff? Or are you going to get the 99 cents macaroni and cheese that's filled with only probably heaven knows what's in there because you can't decipher the ingredients? In fact, I was talking to a guy up in Jacksonville. He's with the South Point Church. I knew him when I was pastoring there. He started a ministry for a certain part of town that's in very, very rough shape. And he said the only grocery store in that area closed down 3 years ago. So the community, when you think of a community grocery store, there isn't one. So you know where they buy their groceries? The 7-Eleven. What type of quality food are you getting at the 7-Eleven? Junk. But a lot of that food is cheap, and it's fast. So he says he sees kids, they were having a spiritual interaction with these kids at the bus stops in the morning, just a few minutes of contact time. He said you'd see them coming. Their breakfast would be a can of Coca-Cola and a bag of potato chips. So that's one reason why this epidemic is the way it is. It's because manufacturers have found cheaper ways to make food by substituting it with ingredients that are harmful. Ingredients you don't want in your body, but they're cheap and people eat it. There's another reason why, though, and that's because the stresses taking place, I think, are unparalleled to what it was before. So people have all this frustration. You have working parents who are just trying to make ends meet, and they're going out of their minds because life is a pressure cooker, so they are now coping with that pain and frustration in their life. This was not the way it was when I grew up in the 60s and 70s. My dad's a pastor. My mom worked with him. She'd go visiting with him if it was appropriate. She would take care of the house, and, you know, we weren't living like kings or anything, but it was different. Mom and Dad, although they were stressed, they didn't have the type of stress that, that Jennifer and I have today. Jennifer's gone 150 days a year, you know, and we're working we're both working, trying to raise a family. You know what I'm saying. You're in the same situation. It's different. It's gotten harder, and so people are just trying to survive. But lifestyle disease is what's happening as we're trying to survive. Now, do you have a lifestyle disease in process? Don't tell me. As we go through this, you answer me. Do you have a lifestyle disease that's taking place in your life right now? It's a set of behaviors or habits when practiced over time create disease and lead to premature death. Some of those habits include, are any of these habits a part of your life? Poor eating habits, little or no exercise, insufficient rest, chronic stress. I battle this one all the time. I don't know about you. Risky behaviors, just smoking, drug use, minimal or no time for play or solitude, limited family or meaningful relationship time. I'll be transparent with you. This is another one that my family struggles with. When you have both people going in different directions more than half of the year, you've got to be very intentional and not let that unit fall apart. And it puts stresses on you that, quite frankly, I'd rather not have. But God has called us to minister, and He's called it. If God calls you to do something, has God given you the ability and the brain to figure out how to make it work? Yes. So we're trying to figure out how to make it work. We've only been doing this 16 years, so you'd think we'd be closer now than we were 16 years ago. Lack of spiritual connection is also a lifestyle disease, as you'll see on Thursday when we talk about trusting God. Now let me ask you, how many people die each year, estimated, because of poor diet and lack of physical activity? If you were to guess. Yeah, it's 400,000. Now, if Al-Qaeda came over here and they somehow nuked a city, wiping out 400,000 people, we'd fix that problem tomorrow. But we have 400,000 people dying a year because they don't eat right and they don't exercise, and we just kind of say, well, you need to move more, you got to eat better, and that's all we do. We can do better. We must do better. We've been throwing solutions at habits. It's great, but what we need to do as a church, we can go deeper. We've been given a platform and the invitation to go deeper into people's lives. Here's what they're dealing with. Let's give ourselves an orientation to see how we can minister to them. On the outside, you see the 10 leading causes of death around the outside of the square. Now, I've not updated this in the last 3 months. This has changed. Since last year, it's changed in the last 3 months. Top left-hand corner, you see septicemia, blood infections, as the 10th leading cause of death. This is no longer the case. It's off the grid now. Do you know what's in its place, if you were to guess? You'd think obesity, but it's suicide. Suicide is now there as one of the 10 leading causes of death. Now, along this perimeter, you see some of the habits that are triggering these leading causes of death. So normally what we do in a health seminar is we throw solutions at these habits. We try to get people off from stop drinking alcohol, stop smoking. We try to get them to exercise more. We try to teach people how to forgive and how not to be angry so they might not want to pick up a gun to solve their problems, right? We talk about promiscuity and the dangers there. We don't have so much to say about motor vehicles, but you can tie that to anger management and also alcohol and substance abuse. We tend to try to do life here. We play at this level. We miss the 8 root causes, though, that are creating this mess. And as long as we continue to ignore this middle square, we will not have success. So we need to decide we're going to be intentional, we're going to come up with a plan, we're going to minister to our church members, but also engage our community at the innermost level of the 8 root causes that's driving them nuts and causing many of them to take their lives or to kill themselves from the inside out. Here are the 8 root causes that are driving this whole mess. Our research team came up with this. Low self-esteem or self-worth, economic disparity, we try to help there, we can do much better. Hopelessness and emotional despair, lack of information, meaningless existence, external and internal stress, anger and frustration, powerlessness and loneliness. Those 8 things are what are driving this epidemic that's killing this country. Now, my question to you is, does the church have anything to say about those 8 things? Do we have a message that speaks to low self-esteem or self-worth? We do. We're children of the King, right? I mean, we're precious, we're prized, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. Do we have any message about hopelessness and emotional despair? We have a message about that. Do we have something to say about meaningless existences? Yeah, we have a message there. External, internal stress. One of our primary messages there is a Sabbath rest. But there's more involved in that. Do we have anything to say about anger and frustration or powerlessness and loneliness? We do. Never has there been a greater time for the church to stand up and lead by being visible demonstrations of the abundant life of Jesus Christ, because these 8 things are not in control of our lives. They're not driving us. If Jesus Christ is in your heart and soul, those 8 things should not be in charge of your life. He's in charge. Doesn't mean you're not going to battle them. Doesn't mean you're not going to deal with them. Doesn't mean you're not going to trip and stumble and cope yourself into one of those things. But it does mean, as a rule, as a tendency of a life, those 8 things will not be driving you anymore. And I think once we become authentic and have Christ's original principles of whole person living and abundant life activated in here, when that happens, and we become demonstrative examples of that, illustrations, whatever you want to say, we'll have an even greater impact in our communities. Because I tell you what, did Jesus have any of these 8 things in him? He didn't have any of them in him. And he was the most effective person who ever lived on this planet in delivering light, life, and hope to people. So this is the standard he's calling us to. This is where the battle needs to be waged, because these 8 things, that's what the other lifestyle is creating in the hearts and minds of people that it's killing. Satan doesn't care if he can kill you in the blink of an eye or if he can kill you over 35 years. Doesn't matter to him. He's got you. Our lifestyle is the opposite of each one of these things. What Creation Health does, and we didn't know we were doing it at the time, is Creation Health, but we should know, if you're teaching God's principles, even when you don't know what you're doing, something's happening that's good. God's 8 original plans, 8 original principles for abundant life, actually bring healing to each of these areas. So even when you teach a Creation Health seminar to your community, you might not be the expert in all those things, but just by delivering his message to those people, they're going to begin experiencing a sense of relief and peace because his principles now are engaging their lives. Making sense? All right. All right, we're going to talk about Creation Health. Strap yourself in. We're going to go at light speed the next 15 minutes. Because I need to tell you a couple things, and I need to get through some stuff. Creation Health came about in the mid-90s. You've heard of Disney World? They were planning a community called Celebration. You've heard of Celebration, Florida? They wanted to have a hospital. Everybody wanted to be their hospital, including us. It boiled down to Florida Hospital and Columbia. Now, it was a very bad time for us as Adventists in Orlando because 2 things were happening. One, you had the movie Road to Wellville was being played at the theaters. Not many people read the book, but a lot of people were seeing the movie of John Harvey Kellogg and the Battle Creek Sanitarium. Now, we as Seventh-day Adventists know some of the, with regards to John Harvey, I just don't know what word to use. We know some of his eccentric challenges. Okay, we love John Harvey for what he did, but let's face it, the guy was a nut magnet in certain areas, okay? He was a fruitcake when it came to certain things. He was one of the best surgeons around. He was one of the best when it came to suturing up. In fact, we had surgeons travel to watch him how he did his surgery. We had surgeons travel to watch how he did his stitching. They could always tell if John Harvey Kellogg had done surgery on you because of how, he did the best suturing of anybody around. He helped promote and helped support the reform movement that we had as a church. But I think there was a reason why we kind of, turn of the century, the early 1900s, don't you see and remember, we kind of distanced ourselves from him a little bit? There are reasons why we distanced ourselves from him. And from what I can tell, the movie Road to Wellville kind of highlighted those reasons why we might have distanced ourselves from him. They made him out to be a fruitcake. And if that was the only association, only initiation, only contact a person had with the Seventh-day Adventist health work, we should be ashamed. So that movie was being played. Also, there was a group of Adventists in Florida who were putting up billboards along the I-4 east-west corridor from Daytona Beach to Tampa saying 2 things. One, the Pope is the Antichrist, and Sunday worship is the mark of the beast. So this is all happening while we're trying to become the hospital in Celebration, Florida, for Walt Disney World. Well, Disney, knowing us, we've been there for a long time, we had a good reputation, been there since 1908, they gave us the benefit of the doubt. And here's what's happened and why they had to give us the benefit of the doubt. Columbia, they put together a letter, and they took the book, Road to Wellville, and they sent it to every Disney board member. And they said, here's the kind of people you're thinking about getting into business with, these Seventh-day Adventists. Now, one of the things that helped us out was We had a very notable Catholic priest in town who had a relationship with the hospital. I don't know how, if it was, clergy of all faiths come and they visit their patients and, their members, but he had a good relationship with us, and he was saying, you know what, those billboards, that's not the Seventh-day Adventists that I know. So it doesn't hurt when you have a Catholic priest defending you against that sort of nonsense, right? But Disney sent an executive named Mr. Stern over to meet with our executives. I wasn't there at the time, mid-90s. And they said, we want you to give us your vision for healthcare for the 21st century. We want you to cast your vision without using Ellen G. White or John Harvey Kellogg. I think that was a great discipline that we had to go through. So our team went back. Face it, we've been leaning on the intellectual giants of these people for about 150 years, right? 140 years. They were the health reformers for this country, for this church, and really we've been leaning on what they did all those years. Well, the team went to work. They found out in the creation story that our health message is embedded in the creation story. You have choice, rest, environment, activity, trust in God, interpersonal relationships, outlook, and nutrition. So they brought Mr. Stern back. They told him about creation health, creating health, disease prevention, being healthy in mind, body, and soul, because wellness is not just about disease. Wellness is not just about being disease-free physically. It's about being healthy emotionally, mentally, spiritually, relationally. So they shared this vision with Mr. Stern. Of those 8 principles, can you guess which one resonated the most with him? I know you don't know, but if you were to guess, for the fun of it. Rest. As it turns out, he was raised a Jew. And as Des and Ted Hamilton, the team, started sharing about rest, and they talked about a Sabbath rest, he lit up. And he started recounting his favorite Sabbath stories growing up in his home as a kid. And to make a long story short, he went back to Disney and told their board, he said, these are the people we need to have as our hospital at Celebration. And so we got the contract, and we built the hospital. It's built around even architecturally built around the 8 principles of we find in the creation story. And a few years ago, I don't know if it's the case now, it was the most successful hospital in the United States. When you look at not volume of revenue, but percentage of, profit. Because I think when you do things God's way, He blesses. In fact, there was an industry expert, I can't remember his name, but when people want to know about healthcare, they go and he's one of the guys they ask. They said, if you want to know how healthcare is supposed to be done, sir, where would you suggest we go look and observe? He said there are only 2 places in the United States. One is Mayo Clinic, the other one is Florida Hospital Celebration Health in Orlando. As a Seventh-day Adventist, that makes me proud that God is blessing His work. So this is where all of it came from back in the 90s. Only 3 years ago did we finish packaging this into an outreach seminar. Until then, it just was a philosophy that had been published in a couple of books. 3 years ago, we put this into a church seminar that anybody in this room can do it. I'm not a clinical person. You would be saying a lot of the same things I'm saying if you were to teach creation health. So let's look at the 8 glimpses and keep moving forward. We're going to talk about choice at the end of this for about 6 minutes. Rest, we're going to talk about tomorrow. Just know that 30 to 40% of the people sleep less than 6 hours a night. That's a big problem. We're going to see why tomorrow. Environment, EPA says we spend 90% of our time inside, and the inside air is 2 to 5 times more polluted than the outside air. We're going to see why tomorrow. Activity on Wednesday. 250,000 people die as a result of a lack of physical activity each year. When you add in poor diet, it boosts to 400,000. When you factor out the diet and just focus in on the lack of activity, it's 250,000. But there's more than just that we need to talk about on Wednesday. Trust in God. If you have faith in God and you trust Him, you extend your life on average by 7 years. If you're African American, you extend your life on average by 14 years when it comes to have a trusting relationship with God. Interpersonal relationships. If you are lonely, you've increased your risk of premature death by 500%. We'll discuss how to deal with that on Thursday. Outlook. We're talking about this on Friday. You need to be here on Friday. Let's put it this way. If you're pessimistic, you've just increased your chances of an early death by 50%. If you're optimistic, you've decreased your chances of an early death by 50%. So if you want to live longer, be optimistic. Nutrition, we're going to talk about this on Thursday, Wednesday with activity. I'm not going to go into it. I have a fascinating study I want to share with you. You're not going to believe it, but it's true. But let me leave this with you. Ed Stanley said, if you don't think you have time for healthy eating, then sooner or later you're going to have to find time for illness. We're going to go into that on Wednesday as well. Okay, how many years do you think the Creation Health lifestyle, the Seventh Adventist lifestyle, is estimated to add to a person's lifespan? 10. In fact, I just heard Des say a few weeks ago that it's now 11. 11 years. So 10 to 11. I need to update the slide. So let's get into choice. I want to tell you 2 stories before I get into choice. I think I can do this. The Surgeons General came to Florida Hospital a year and a half ago, and they gave a lecture. The 6 living Surgeons General. Learned a lot. They each had 10 minutes. I could listen to them all day. They said 2 things. One, first of all, they awarded Adventist Health System with a certificate of excellence for health care in Florida. And they all 6 signed it. And they made it a point and they said, you need to treasure this because it's the only document all of us, each of the 6, have ever signed. We appreciate the work you're doing so much. So it's an honor. God is really blessing and opening doors. Second thing they said was, for every dollar that you invest in your prevention, you'll save $14 in health care costs. So you might think it's a little, if your insurance doesn't cover some of these preventative things, it's well worth your money to figure out a way to go get it done some way. Because that means if you invest $100 in some preventative type screening, you're going to save $1,400 somewhere along the way in health care costs in the time to come. That was their statistics, not mine. I had read for every dollar you invest, you save 6 to 7, but they said 14. Third thing they said was obesity is now considered to be a threat to national security. As it turns out, as people leave the service, our government cannot find people to replace them because they can't pass the physical exam, and our population is so obese, and so many of them have diabetes that they can't fill those positions fast enough. So now it's a threat to national security, obesity is. It's amazing. The last thing I'll leave you with that they said was this. Regardless if you're Republican or Democrat, there is a problem with health care in this country. As a father of a 5-year-old, he's turning 5 in July, I want my son to have access to the best health care he can get in this country. So personally, I'm invested in this. I know this, though, I could give free health care to my son till he's 60 years old, but is free health care, and they're not going after free health care, but is free health care going to change what we saw on those maps? No. A pill, a surgery, an intervention is not going to change that trend. What's going to change the trend is you and me doing something about it. Now, there is a crisis with health care in this country. The Surgeons General said it's doubling every generation. 3 generations ago, it's 4% of health care costs when you look at our gross national product, gross domestic product. Then it moved to 8%. In our generation, it's 16%. A generation from now, what we spend on health care as a country will be 32% of our budget. Generation after that will be 64. 3 generations from now, it'll be 128. Is that sustainable to you as a business person? No. So regardless if you're Republican or Democrat, we're headed toward bankruptcy because of the health care situation that we can't sustain with the tools and structure that we have now because people are intentionally killing themselves with how they're living. In fact, I saw a stat in California a month ago. I was over there for meetings a month ago, and I've not verified this, so don't quote me. They said that if things don't change, health care will bankrupt our country by 2018. I doubt it, but we're not far off. So something has to be done. The good news is, if it's happening from within, can we choose to do something about it? Yes. So let's talk about choice in the last few minutes. Choice is the first step toward improved health. Nobody is telling us, nobody's mandating to us that we have to live lives that are unhealthy, lack energy, and that are leading to premature death. No one's forcing that on us. We have a choice we can choose to change right now. If you want to feel better today, you know one simple thing you can do, she's modeling it right there, is they call a Duchenne smile. You smile by using the muscles around your eyes, so it needs to be, and I can't do it because now I'm self-conscious, but if you have a legitimate smile around your eyes, it triggers positive emotions in your physiological system. Versus the fake cheese, the fake smile, does nothing. But if you can think of something, put a smile on your face, it'll boost your wellness. It's called a Duchenne smile. But choice, the point is the first step toward improved health. It's the ability to direct our will. Now, it's important because our choices are determining where we're heading. Where are we heading if nothing changes by what we saw on those maps? Death, absolutely. 9 out of the 10 leading causes of death are lifestyle choices. That's where we're going. So if you ask yourself today, and don't tell me, answer yourself throughout the day, if my life stays the same, if I don't change anything this week with how I'm living, where's the destination for me? You need to play it out with your own life. Play it out where you're headed. And if you're going to get there much sooner than you want, is the pain of missing time with those whom you love most, and the pain of serving Christ and helping people experience Him, will that pain of missing out on that be enough to make you want to change? Because people don't change until the pain of the current situation becomes more than the pain of making the change. People change only when their current situation is so painful that that pain is far greater than the discomfort it takes to make the choice to change. And the only way you can get there is in your brain that God gave you, is to forecast where you're headed. And let that get a hold of your soul. Let it grip you. People who have choice and control are much healthier than groups who don't. This was done in a nursing home. They took 2 groups of people. One half of the nursing home, the nurse made every decision for that group of people. The other half of the nursing home, the people had to make their own decision. What they were going to have for breakfast, what night they were going to see their movie. They were told to go get a plant, to water it and give it sunshine. They were put in control. At the end of 18 months, many more people had died in the group that wasn't given any choice or control. Those who were given choice and control, fewer people had died at the end of this study. And it was a landmark study that made headlines across the country. And they're linking it to, if you feel like you're in charge of your life and you have control, you're going to be happier and you're going to live longer. So if people call you a control freak, you know what they're saying, but don't worry about being called a control freak. I'd rather be a control freak than to have the opposite be the case and have myself being in control of everybody else. In fact, we're really going to talk about this on Friday during Outlook. I hope you're here because that is the most important one. There are blessings to having choice. A person who has a sense of choice has what they call intrinsic motivation. We'll talk about that on Friday during Outlook because I'm running out of time, and we're going to spend a whole session on it on Friday. In turn, having choice, we've already talked a bit about this, has numerous physical and psychological benefits. You know what? You know what I'd suggest? I'm not here to sell or promote, but I do know that Chris told me we have 16 Creation Health Seminar personal study guides at the back at the table. 300 pages long. We have a whole chapter on choice. If this in any way interests you, and you'd like to work through some of these principles, go see Chris. I don't know what the price is. I'm sure it's really not too bad, and you can get that. In fact, there's a self-assessment in the back of that book that talks about how happy are you with your life. Okay, frontal lobe. Frontal lobe is the seat of our choices. I'm going to give you, it's where we make our reasoning, our social norms, long-term planning. Hopefully you know this because I got to speed through it. What I want to cover here is, and maybe I can get your outline out because I want you to write this down. We're now in the answer section of your outline. If you want to take the notes, follow along. If you don't have to. But for those of you who want to take the notes, we're going to answer this question right here. When you look at the frontal lobe as compared to cats, dogs, chimpanzees, and human beings, there's a big difference in how God created us. In your outline, it says the frontal lobe takes up what percentage of the brain? I didn't put cats in there because I didn't want to offend the cat lovers. I like cats. We had to put ours to sleep before Christmas. Unfortunately, it's like 3% of their brain volume is frontal lobe. But in your outline, what percentage of the frontal lobe is in dogs? In dogs, frontal lobe takes up 7%. In chimps, it takes up 17%, the frontal lobe as far as brain volume is concerned. In human beings, it takes up 35%. So do you think there's a reason why in cats we have 3% frontal lobe volume versus humans 35%? Do you think that would make us a more elevated species? God created us with power we don't even recognize, power we're not even aware of. You have a powerhouse up here that's amazing. You can do whatever you want with this brain because of the frontal lobe. But say you're not going to make a decision, you've already made a decision. Anything less than a conscious commitment to the important is an unconscious commitment to the unimportant. If you say, I'm not going to decide, well, you've made a decision. Doing nothing in your outline is also a choice. You can do something, you can do nothing. Either way, you're making a choice. So you might as well make a choice that supports you. Last blank in your outline, good choices taken to extremes create poor outcomes. How many times have we seen that with regards to the health message? Good choices taken to extremes create poor outcomes. Of all the things I've seen people being chased away from church by, I would say the health message has to rank up there in the top 5 of chasing people away from this church, in my opinion. That's Lionel Mountain's opinion. That's not Florida Hospital Adventist Health System's opinion. That's my opinion. Grew up in the church, pastored for 15 years. We don't want to be extreme. Now, the first blank in your outline, the power of choice is located in the frontal lobe. Okay, frontal lobe. If you missed that, see me afterwards. Things that weaken the frontal lobe. Of the many things, we usually say smoking, alcohol, drugs, but let me tell you something. Inactivity weakens it. Junk food weakens it. Lack of sleep. You can take a smoker who eats well and exercises. You can take a Seventh-day Adventist who's a vegetarian or a vegan for that matter, who doesn't exercise, and the smoker will be healthier than the vegan who doesn't exercise or supplement with vitamin B12. So as Adventists, I'm putting it up here for us. Oftentimes we let ourselves off too easy. There are things that we do that are just as damaging as what people do out there that we preach to all the time. All right? Preaching to the choir, preaching to me. There are some things that you can do to increase your frontal lobe to help yourself make good choices. Think positive thoughts. It activates and strengthens the portion of your brain that will reinforce optimistic thinking. Get physical. Mental activity like crossword puzzles, Sudoku, all that stuff. Memorizing Bible texts is a great way to boost the strength of your mind. Massage. Massage actually prioritizes blood flow to your brain. So if you get a massage, you're strengthening your brain, you're strengthening your frontal lobe. Sunshine releases a hormone called serotonin, chemical called serotonin. What does serotonin do? Serotonin lessens cortisol and the other stress hormones in your body, because stress has a negative effect on your frontal lobe. So if you want to strengthen your frontal lobe, go stand out in the sunshine 15, 20 minutes today. Eat good carbohydrates and listen to uplifting music. And don't think just because your music is uplifting, it's uplifting to somebody else. I have a coworker, I love her very much. I think she's going to go to heaven. She says she doesn't like Jennifer's music. That's why I say I think she's going to go to heaven. But she said, your wife's music just puts me in a frame of mind that is not a good place to be. That's fine. I love her. She's a confidant. We have a good relationship. So what? I don't care if she listens to my wife's music or not. But for her, it's not uplifting. So don't think that your music is uplifting. I think Jennifer's music is uplifting, but not to everybody. Let's wind this down. I'm going over. Choice tips. Stay focused on the real choice. We're constantly distracted by stuff in life. 2, don't make decisions when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. If that were the case, some people might not ever make decisions. Hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And choose one thing, one wise choice at a time. Even God took 7 days to create the earth, stepped it out. You got to choose to change. Nothing's going to happen unless you commit to it. What are you willing to commit to this week while you're here during camp meeting? Pray to see where God wants you to make a change. Think about your life. Follow through. I don't have time to spend on these slides. I'm sorry that you're going to miss some of them. We talked about that. When you veer off course, here's the one thing you need to do. You're going to veer off course, just get back on course, okay? No big deal. Just start again. We talked about that. What I want to ask you is this: how satisfied are you with your life today? Are you happy? Don't tell me, tell yourself. Are you happy? Are there any changes you want to make? What direction are your choices taking you in? There's some things I want to change in my life because I don't like the direction I'm going. But you know what? It's okay, because health is about progress, not perfection. If you're not where you want to be, it's okay. You can progress in that direction. Last year when I was here, retina detached. 4 months later, macular scarring. But they had to remove 3 layers of scarring. I couldn't even see the E on the eye chart. They told me you can't do anything to strengthen your immune system. They told me I couldn't do anything vigorous for months and months and months. I got the all clear just a few weeks ago. So now I can get back to what I want to do to be healthy again. Life happens. You wake up one morning, you're diagnosed with stage 3 cancer, maybe. Life happens. So give yourself a break, okay? Forgive yourself if you're not where you want to be. It's about progress, not perfection. As you make progress and make better choices, you'll become a healthier, happier person because we are what we choose. So reflect on what changes you want to make this week and then pray about it and know that you're in the driver's seat. This is going to be hammered home on Friday morning. You don't want to miss Friday morning. You might believe this intellectually right now, but when we're through Friday, you're going to believe it here in your heart. God's desire for us is that we'll prosper in all things and be in health just as our soul prospers. Today, you're only one choice away from living a better life, from living life to the fullest. That's our introduction. Thank you for your patience. Tomorrow, we're going to go over rest and environment, and hope you're back then. Pastor Chris?
Yeah, just pick up.
No, sorry.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We hope you join us each day. Lionel made a reference to this particular book. This is probably the most amazing textbook that I've seen for this price. I'm not just selling it, not with the ABC or anything, but textbooks of this quality are usually well over $100, sometimes $200. And because Florida Hospital, is it a not-for-profit? Yeah. So they put a lot of their profit into community health. And so they produced this amazing book. It's normally $25 plus shipping. I have some here, not that many, and I'm really selling them for $20 and no shipping and no tax. So if you want them, there's a few of them up there you can get. Absolutely free. There's going to be, there's on the desk over there, there's a quick self-assessment, okay? Now, if we happen to run out of those, you go to creationhealth.com, and you can do the online health assessment right online, okay? But if you don't have a computer and you like to write things down, pick these up at the back. So they're on the desk up there. 2:30 in room 100, we're going to kind of do a debrief, and you can ask about how you can do this in your church. So that'll be this afternoon. Have a really good lunch. Don't eat too much. Stay awake. And we'll see you at 2:30. Thank you very much.